I'm going to drop a link real quick into the chat. I'll refer to that in just a minute. So as Vesta said at the beginning of the call, we made a bunch of changes to the issue list. There's some process, some policy, and some actual changes that we made. It looks like I made all these changes, and I just want to make sure it's very clear to everybody. This is not some unilateral thing that I did. I'm simply the actor or the one whose user account got tagged with everything. So it looks like I was the kind of going through like crazy in the issue list. These are all things that I'm going to share with you. Well, it looks like I did them. They were all done with a lot of conversation with Microsoft. There was a lot of debate with this. It was not something that was done at a very off the cuff. We did this for many. We talked about this for many weeks internally before we did this. So, and everything was approved by Microsoft. Definitely open to feedback. So let me kind of explain what we did here. There's a handful of things that we ended up doing. So what you see here, I've got the issue list here. First of all, if you jump over to the wiki, there are now a few new pages in the wiki. You'll see them in the section in the navigation off on the left-hand side. So first of all, the issue list, and then there's a handful of other things that we have listed over here. If you take a look at the issue list page, this kind of explains what the general policy and is with the issue list as far as Microsoft looks at it. Specifically, what does belong in the issue list, what does not belong in the issue list, the approach to closed issues, the approach to locked issues. I'll talk about those in just a minute, as well as some issue templates. Now, I'm not going to walk through all of this stuff. I'm going to kind of let you look at this at your own time, and we will continue to update this as needed. The special actions section I have at the very bottom is the link that I posted to the chat just a minute ago, and this explains all the stuff that happened yesterday. So specifically what we did, and I'll come back to this in just a minute, but one of the big things or big additions that we have to the issue list is that now when you go over to the issues and you go to create a brand new issue, you will be presented with the first step here of what kind of an issue you're going to create. Is it a bug or an error report? Is it a generic issue? That's kind of like what we had before. This generic question or generic issue is going to be the same thing if you click on this blank issue. A feature request, just as a heads up, as we explain in the wiki, feature requests don't belong in the issue list. We want those going to user voice because that's where Microsoft Engineering triages new feature requests to add them to their backlog. So as it explains in the issue, if you go to create it, it will flat out explain it, go into preview here, that it will say that if you do submit this as a feature request, it will be automatically labeled as a feature request and it will be automatically closed, which will point you to user voice. Feel free to use this if user voice isn't going to give you the formatting and stuff that you want and you want to reference the issue that was created. But we just trying to guide people in that direction that you will be automatically tagged and closed with the user voice request. The other thing too is that you see down here is that there are things that that this issue list is not for. So it is primarily for developer issues or development SharePoint development issues. If this is an issue that is related to end user, administrator, the end user experience, admin stuff, those things belong in the tech community site. If it is a feature request, again, it goes as user voice as well. So all of that stuff is going to end up, we have these different links here where you can go create those different issues. And we also refreshed or updated the template that gets created for the issue as well. So you'll see a bunch of additional things like describe the bug. We got this thing, please delete this guidance that you see here in this line, delete this one line before you submit it. And then at the very end, we even put developer environment stuff that we're looking for. All this stuff helps us quite a bit in helping you. The more information you can provide, the better it is. Now, some of the big things that we ended up doing, some big changes that we ended up doing to the issue list. First, there was a sweeping action that affected, let me look at my notes, roughly 250 of our 762 open issues. So what we ended up doing is there was a time last year, really falls down into three different categories. First of all, there was a time last year when the labeling capability that we have in our issue list wasn't working. And so we had roughly 80 some issues that had no labels assigned to them. Instead of walking through each one of those issues to figure out what this was, what category can we apply it to, In addition, those 80 issues, they had no activity on them for way over 6 months. So we took the approach of, instead of taking the time to detail each individual issue and trying to triage each of those 80 individual issues, that a lot of them very well may no longer be a problem or an issue or whatever, we're going to go ahead and close them. But when we closed everything, that everything got a comment assigned to it with a link to one of their new sections in the wiki that explains what we did, why we did it, and how you can remediate that process. So if an issue of yours was automatically closed, or if it was automatically locked, which I'll explain in a second, we explain how you can remediate that. It's not like the last straw that you see when that happens. So that was one change we did. Another change that we did is that we went back and we looked at all issues that had that were open, that had no activity on them in over 7 months. And that means there were no updates to it. There were no questions that were asked. Nobody did anything with these issues. They were effectively old things that nobody was doing. It very well could have been that some of these are still relevant today, that there's still bugs that are out there and they haven't been addressed. Totally get it. We have, when issues are recognized as a bug by Microsoft, they're put inside of they're added to an internal backlog, like a DevOps board at Microsoft. We don't have access to that. But when that happens, what they do is they actually go in and label those issues as a status tracked. And so what we did is we took all issues that had no activity on them for over 6 months and they were not being tracked, and we closed them and we locked them. Now, when we did that, when we closed them, again, we posted a message and said, here's what just happened. Here's why we did it. If you don't think this was done correctly, here's how you can remediate that and how you can do it. And there's already people that have been doing that stuff. I've seen a couple issues get submitted by people overnight. If I go to these closed issues, you'll see where someone said this thing that, hey, here's how I want to go. I want to get that issue opened back up. So they referenced the issue. And then we went back and we've already gone back to this issue and we've already unlocked it and opened it back up. If I scroll down here, we unlocked it and opened it back up to where the issue we can keep discussing it. Now, another challenge that we've had with the issue list lately is that when an issue is closed, generally speaking, I know not everybody believes this, but generally speaking, on an open repo like what we have here, when an issue is closed, people generally see that as resolved or conversation over. And you may not agree with that, but that's the vast majority of how people see stuff. When we had a closed issue and someone would go in after 6 months and say, I'm having this problem, can someone help me? Nobody was seeing that, and that's leaving a really bad experience for that one user, or at least nobody is seeing it that was not already involved with that issue. So if I was involved in the conversation in the original issue, then yeah, I'm going to get an email update. But if I wasn't, then I'm never going to see what this person asked, and they're going to think that nobody cares. So what we did is we followed a process that a lot of other repositories do, and we went ahead and locked any issues that were closed and they've had no activity in 7 days. So if an issue gets closed and then has no activity in 7 days, it gets locked, and that means that nobody can add any more comments to it. When that happens, we also add a comment saying, here's why we locked it. If you don't agree that this should have been locked, then here's how you can go back and remediate it. And you see here, even on the screenshot, I have a link here going to our wiki that explains, here's how you do that. And effectively, it's just go open a new issue, reference this one, tell us why. All right, and we're not trying to keep people from posting stuff. We're just trying to make it a more efficient place to go through and to address people's feedback. Okay. There are also automations that have been set up so that this will happen automatically in the future. So if you received a whole bunch of emails overnight that said issues were closed, and then you deleted all those notifications and you saw a bunch more show up, this automation runs every 24 hours and it will check to see, are there any issues that have been closed that also have no activity on them? And if so, go ahead and lock them. You'll see stuff that's being done by this bot, and we have a couple other little automations and stuff that's like that as well. That's generally the big changes that we've made. We've also got some nice pages here that we've added about how to create a good issue, things that you should do, things that you shouldn't do, how to create a PR as well. We put that in there as well, and some extra explanation on some of our issue labels that we use and such. So I want to turn this back over to the next presenter. But again, I'll be on the chat and I'm happy to answer any detailed questions about this. And if you have any feedback on stuff that we did that you don't like, or stuff that we did that you would suggest that we should also consider and do. Again, the idea here is this issue list, we want to make it engaging. We want to make it the best resource for you to be able to ask questions and submit issues and errors that you find with the SharePoint developer experience. But we also have to follow a couple little rules here to make sure that we can do stuff. I mean, someone tells me that, hey, I did this in the SharePoint Admin Center and it didn't work. How do I fix this? It's like, we can't do anything about that in this issue list. That really goes in the tech community site or as a real issue that's submitted through your Microsoft 365 portal. So with that, again, I'm happy to just answer any questions that you've got on the chat.
Cool. There wasn't actually too many questions on the chat for now. Let's see if we get more when Chris starts presenting. I want to recap. Andrew Connell wasn't the person who created the process. He wasn't the person who made the decisions. He wasn't the person who now accidentally closed your issue. It was a decision by Microsoft, and we work with a lot of the MVPs because that's how we scale. So if we, by an accident, closed any of your issue, there is again remediation on instructions, and we do apologize, but this is for the common good for everybody. So let's reset and move forward from there. And I do apologize if somebody got offended on that.